In this episode, I continue our interview with Dan about all things AppSource. In case you missed part 1 of this episode, please visit nz365guy.com/24 to catch up on the discussion. This is the Dynamics 365 show focusing on the ingredients of a successful Dynamics 365 practice. Your host is Business Solution MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as NZ365 Guy. If you're thinking or in the process of developing a product for either Dynamics 365 or the Power Platform, I'd love to have a chat with you. Hit me up on nz365guy.com. To review the show notes for this episode, please go to nz365guy.com/28. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our generous contribution from our sponsor, Ingenious. Ingenious Connector Enterprises integrates your telephone system into Microsoft Dynamics 365 and CRM for increased phone agent productivity. The solution equips service desk and contact centers with features like screen pop, click to dial, automated call logging, and call reporting for a comprehensive view of interactions. Enable efficient customer service and intelligent decision-making with Ingenious. For more information, please visit ingenious.com. Hi everyone, I'm back with Dan Hesketh for our part 2 episode about getting listed on AppSource. We've previously had Dan on the show in episode 24. You can listen to it at nz365guy.com/24. But we had so much ground to cover and wanted to continue the discussion. We've also had a lot of feedback from people that have listened to that episode, and therefore we decided to quickly get another one in the can. We'll further explore the advantages to listing in AppSource and the future of AppSource and tips for other companies wanting to launch products on the platform. In case you missed the first time round, Dan is a passionate Microsoft Dynamics 365 solution architect and functional developer, currently working in Melbourne, Australia. He leans towards UI and UX design, end-user face training, and all associated technologies used to assist with user adoption. He has been involved in database and CRM projects as varied as they come. Dan, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me again, Mark. Great to be here.
Yeah, okay, so the last episode obviously got a lot of attention, a lot of people's interest, and I know that Microsoft internally are doing a lot around, encouraging ISVs to come onto the Power Platform, as it seems to become the official name now that we're hearing for, the Common Data Service and building your own apps on top of the Power Platform, being Common Data Service, Power Apps, Flow, Power BI, and of course, integration to all the first-party apps like Dynamics for sales, service, marketing, etc. that sit on the platform. So just carrying on, if you like, from where we left off last time, have you seen any key advantages to listing an AppSource for the exposure of your product, growth of your business, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think definitely one of the obvious ones straight off the bat was the fact we were getting, obviously, a lot of people worldwide sort of downloading and trying the apps. So, and even as far as, there was definitely some partners involved there too, having a bit of a dabble, but there was end customers as well. And that was something I hadn't really thought a lot about, but there was a lot of end customers from lots of different countries, different market sizes, trying the apps out. And that's something, these are customers that I wouldn't have been able to get in front of or, even know about without that stream. So that was kind of interesting. The other definitely had some flow-on work from actually the apps. So the apps are almost like a lead-in. Had a couple of bits of work come through because they'd tried the apps out or seen them or watched the videos and then got onto my website and then noticed we did other things, other services. And so that was a nice adjunct as well. Intro to other partners, getting other partners just interested in it and in a way kind of building our own brand a little bit because of the things we were doing with the apps. That was definitely worthwhile from both a partner perspective and Microsoft perspective. One other thing that's probably been a big advantage that we may cover a little bit later is the other Microsoft programs and things that sort of hook in to AppSource as in the OCP catalog, and it was also forming maybe part of a CSP Tier 1 requirement, and also the new competency that's come out, which we'll probably talk about later. So that's definitely some advantages to listing, apart from the obvious things.
Yeah, so that raised a question for me around, you talk about you got exposed to some international markets that you weren't aware of before. How do you deal with the logistics something as simple as you're going to start taking international payments. Are you going to start charging in various currencies, or are you just going to transact, in your case, in Australian dollars? How did you, are those kind of logistical issues that you've now had to kind of start to look at and address?
Definitely, and done in pure haste after listing the apps. Again, I was probably a bit naive as to some of the follow-up steps required, but as these things sort of start happening and you go, ooh, didn't think about that, had to kind of hurriedly get some of these things in place. I looked at things like PayPal, for international payments. We already had our own billing locally in Australia, and I managed to figure out a way that could definitely take credit cards, international ones, and other payments. So in a way, I kind of had half of it set up already inadvertently, and the rest I had to sort of hurry around and get sorted. So yeah, you definitely do have to be ready to catch the ball if it gets thrown at you.
Yeah, so true, so true. So what's your greatest takeaways from being exposed to AppSource distribution platform?
I think the fact that, again, I was probably approaching it from a very product-centric perspective to begin with. So I wasn't thinking about all those other things sort of that hover around the sales process, not having an ISV product for sale internationally before. But it's definitely not as simple as just listing the thing and then you're going to get bombarded with sales. I think you do have to think about things more, be a bit more considered with your marketing materials and whatever, and all of your payments and other services that hang off that. I did listen to your earlier podcast with Jerry Weinstein on it. I did identify with, he was saying, the fact that when you give out a free trial to your product, you're expected to build in this whole demo period, 30 days or whatever you want to do there. So that's definitely, there's a lot to it, to getting this all set up and having it run smoothly. But I think the other aspect that I've taken away is just the importance of probably a partner channel. Because look, you can get leads from end customers from all over the world, and they can sort of take the bait and bite and say, look, this is good, can we buy it? Yes, you can, here it is. But I think to get a really good flow going and get anything more than just here and there, it probably requires more involvement from the partner channel and getting those partner relationships, partner programs going, pushing your products for you and helping their customers use them. And that's definitely something I've taken away.
Interesting. When I had John Gravely on the show, and he built Click Dimensions out and then, exited very successfully with that product. And, Partner Channel is, really his main go-to-market channel, where they picked up a heck of a lot of their business, and he systematically, if you like, conquered worldwide that Microsoft Partner, kind of the SI channel. And so, ended up, if you like, had this massive sales force all over the world promoting their product. And yeah, it definitely can't be overlooked to how you're going to engage or go to market with partners.
Completely agree. Completely.
So that just around that topic then, have you given any consideration? Like, I always see that with partners, there's really two channels of engagement with a partner. So you've got the partner's going to set up kind of some reseller agreement, have that in place with you. There might be a kind of follow-on revenue clip associated to it. In Click Dimensions case, that did exist. And even, back in the day, in the way you sold Dynamics CRM, you would get revenue recognition from Microsoft rebated to you. And it would last for, let's say, the first year, and then kind of, drop off, after that point, kind of, for the license renewals and stuff that you would have in place. But I always feel that there's one of the channels that are missed are actually Dynamics 365 consultants. And that they are, you're going to get a couple of consultants that are really passionate about your product. And when I say a couple, I'm saying a couple per city, and, all going well. And so, and it's kind of like, what's the reward in there for them? Now, you can say, hey, that's just part of their normal job and good luck with them. But hang on a second, we're in business, everyone's got to put food on the table. And I just think that, or buy some toys. And I just think that, sometimes the individual consultant is overlooked as how do you kind of encourage them or compensate them, that really go out, and often it's not the salesperson that's actually selling this kind of add-on solution, or the sales kind of already in train for the Dynamics implementation. And I just feel that, things like, Amazon and Amazon vouchers and things like that are just a untapped resource, because you can't give them kind of like a cash incentive necessarily, because they're bound to have employment agreements with their own employers that say, hey, you're not allowed to, moonlight and,
Yes.
sell your own stuff, but the thing is that, a gift card, $50, $100 gift card at, Amazon, every now and again in an informal way, I think would go a long way to build, that kind of channel. And I think it's an untapped channel that exists around the world. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a very, very good point. If you didn't hear me, I was just writing that down. But I definitely think you're right that going direct to partners in a sort of formal partner agreement, partner channel, reseller arrangement is the obvious one, and that can definitely bear fruit, like John Gravely's proven. But I think you're right that there's definitely, in particular we mentioned in the first podcast around the types of apps that people are listing anyway. If it's a small add-on like mine are, or a little add-on versus a full vertical solution, probably the angles are different. But for a small add-on, you're right. The consultants out on the ground are actually the ones that probably, number one, might see the benefit for themselves to make their life easier, implementing for their customers, and number two, obviously giving their customers something they need. So I think you're right that there should be a way of compensating them or encouraging them to look at these options.
It's interesting because, I'm a bit of a fan of John Gravely and what he did, because he did it twice. He had a company called C360, and that company started off as just add-ons, little add-ons, to Dynamics back in the day of filling gaps, that the product had. And, one product led into 2 and led into 10, and all of a sudden had once again a very successful business that he was able to exit from successfully, and do very well from. And I just think that, you got a couple of products in market, but, fast forward 5 years, could that be that you might have 10 products in market and you've actually got a distribution channel then in place, around the world?
We can hope.
Yeah. What enhancements would you like to see made in AppSource? What's missing? This
is a big one. There's a couple of things here, and I think from everyone I've listened to and some of your podcasts it's come up. I think one of the big things from my point of view that's missing is security and licensing. Now, this flows back to the main core products as well that you're building on. So the platform, so Dynamics 365 itself. I think there isn't quite enough security in place to protect people's IP, in particular in the way that AppSource, the delivery method's working. So they're pushing the fact that you should be doing free trials with people to let them install in their instance your product, your solution. And there isn't a mechanism to rip it out again, after the 30-day trial. So it sits there. Now, it might be a managed solution and you might have, obfuscated code and all that sort of stuff. But in reality, there's no way of pulling that back out again. So I think security and licensing is a massive topic on its own, and IP protection, but they're tied to the platform, and relying on that changing first, which might be a little while, but things are changing, as we know, daily. The other one is billing. So billing and actual, being able to effectively turn AppSource eventually into a place where it can handle the licensing and cost and billing. So if someone wants to try the thing and then buy it, it's sort of all handled internally. At the moment, once again, AppSource is an experience platform. So it's up to us individually all over the place listing apps to try and build in this 30-day trial mechanism, try and build in our own billing, international billing, demo periods, everything. So there's a lot of gaps there around why are we all doing the same thing over and over again, in a kind of ad hoc way. It would be great if there was one size fits all solution. I did even have Neil Benson, when I did a talk at Dynamics 365 Saturday, suggest that maybe we should just go and do it ourselves, build something and then license it, make a business out of it. Good idea. The other thing is probably the user experience part of, downloading apps. It's pretty good, but it does have room for improvement. And one area I've found is a little bit lacking, in particular with the test drive feature, which we were big on using, and that's what my apps are utilizing at the moment on the AppSource site. We allow people to jump into our environment and experience straight away, effectively, our apps running in our own environment, test data, within seconds they can try it. But we found some almost gaps in the fact that if you're logged in, Mark, to your own tenant, Office 365 tenant, Dynamics or whatever, and then you go to AppSource, which a lot of people do, and try out one of our apps via the test drive, because you've been provisioned in my environment, when you go and get the link to log in to my site, it says that whole message about, hey, you're not from this organization, because you're already logged in to your tenant, and it's sort of causes a bit of a conflict. So I've actually had quite a lot of people, I don't have the full telemetry or anything on this, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people jumping on to try our test drives are getting almost that error, almost like getting blocked, and they probably give up, which is a big problem. So there is some known, and the team apparently knows about these issues, but I'm not sure what can be done about it. Typically, I'm trying to explain to people to use a private browsing session, when they want to.
Yeah, and private browsing, yeah, totally. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but so there's a couple of areas there that I think could use a lot of improvement, and they are big things to tackle.
Yeah. Interesting. It's making me think, hey, I should try and get somebody, the PM of the AppSource product, on the show and put a bunch of these questions to them and see if they can move the dial on some of them. So what do you see the future for AppSource? What does it hold in your view?
Well, I think, as we can see, again, I don't have the back-end figures like you may have seen these, but the actual number of customers using the site, downloading trials, using the test drives is, from my point of view with my apps, I was pretty astounded as to how many of these I'm getting. So without any marketing, again, any other pushing, it just literally they just keep coming. So the site is getting traffic, the platform's getting traffic. There is customers now going to find these solutions for themselves rather than the old days where they would always come to us as a partner or whatever. They're just going out to find this stuff themselves. So if you have to be in it to win it, you don't want to be not on here because you don't agree with some of the parts that are lacking maybe, or that aren't quite there yet. It's sort of, you could be missing some opportunities. And I think, I always ask, myself, where are we going to get our new customers from? And I think a good friend of mine always says, that's a classic problem everyone has in any industry. Where are we going to get the sales from? Where are they coming? Where are our customers? Where are our ideal customers? And the actual answer these days is everywhere. You can't kind of just do one thing anymore. You have to be doing everything, everywhere.
Yeah. Interesting. So let's take a look 5 years ahead. Where do you think AppSource will be? Or where would you like it to be?
Well, I would definitely love it. Going back to the sort of enhancements that I'd like to see made, in a way, in 5 years' time, I would hope that the platform is a lot more integrated, I guess, as far as billing, licensing. It does seem silly that we all have to go around building all this stuff, reinventing the wheel, when Microsoft could easily provide that kind of a platform for us, whether they take a clip of it or whatever, who cares, as long as they're doing the right thing. I think the security and IP protection is something I would definitely hope that they address as fast as they can. But again, hopefully this Power Platform, everything's moving really fast there. Hopefully the last sort of 7-8 years of CRM from version 5, I guess, CRM 2011 onwards, has been pretty static. The solution framework has been pretty much the same in Dynamics terms. And I'm hoping that maybe we get some extra development on that stuff. And I know with the Power Apps now being, you can deploy them in solutions. And so that stuff's all coming together. I'm hoping that we get an unlock of some new features there on that side, that we can protect ourselves a bit more with our ISV solutions.
Yeah, it's almost like there needs to be some type of vein or artery to your solution that is controlled via another, cloud environment, that if you cut that vein or artery, the solution dies inside the tenant, becomes fully obsolete.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of what we've done with our apps, to be honest, and that's the way you have to go about it. If you have everything client-side, JavaScript, or even plugins, server-side, it's really still not robust enough. People can still just try to turn the plugins off or get around things. So yes, having a vein, as you say, into Azure or some other licensing service, and that's how we achieved the 30-day trial scenarios and other things. But yeah, that's I hope a lot of that stuff's definitely sorted within that period of time, the next few years. And look, I think it will only get better. Obviously, the user experience will get better. People are used to the iOS App Store. That's what they expect. Just click a button, download it, try it.
Yeah. But like, I know talking to people in the product team, they've got no intention that it's ever going to be an iOS app store. It's not going to be iTunes. It's not going to be Google Play. That's not their kind of model. So therefore, what's going through my mind is that perhaps they're never going to put in a mechanism to control licensing or a mechanism to control billing, which if that's the case, then I think that, yes, there's an absolute opportunity for somebody to come up with that kind of IP functionality that allows you to plug into any kind of payment gateway of your choosing, but add that into any type of application at a cost model that's, not arduous because it's part of really another solution. But, that type of tooling, if Microsoft, has no intention or no plan, and it'll be interesting to get their take on that, then I think there is an opportunity for somebody to create a kind of like standardized solution that everybody that is in the space can go, hey, it's a no-brainer just to adopt that rather than build my own unique thing when it's really wanting to handle those two scenarios, payments and licensing control and or IP control.
Agreed. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, okay. So when we look at revenue streams through AppSource, obviously there's nothing that comes from the platform as we've just discussed. But let's have a look at how you consider revenue streams or if you like, even licensing constructs in a model where, you distribute to AppSource. Are you looking at, the kind of SaaS model where it's a month-by-month ongoing recurring revenue, and therefore you've really got to set up an automated payment solution around that, right? Because you don't want to be manually invoicing each month. So you got that, or are you going to sell it as a formal license, kind of like the old model, you license for 3 years, maybe add maintenance on, that type of scenario? Or is there something else? What are your thoughts around that?
We definitely went through that thought process ourselves, and my mind kept going back to Shaka Chabot. I think, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, but there was an Australian Partner Summit session she did a year and a half ago, where she mentioned the whole pricing scenario, the pricing conundrum, and how a lot of people are sort of shy about putting pricing on their websites and they try to hide it. Her view was just to put it out there, advertise it, but you're going to change your pricing about 6 to 10 times, statistics show, because you're not going to get it right the first time. Don't worry, just do it and figure it out. Now, I think there is definitely lots of different models in the Dynamics world. We've seen a lot of these, the move to per user per month scenarios. A lot of people do that. That obviously has its complications when you're trying to, how do you, obviously you got to count, is this an honest system where you're trusting people, or are you counting their stuff out of their environment, active users?
I personally don't think an honest system works, and I think that Microsoft is case in point that as in the dynamic space, that it doesn't work. Even the team license now, I think, is probably well overextended as in people's application of the licensing construct into other areas, because no constraint. I think that if a system is not constrained, people can even not intentionally breach license. And, Microsoft is, in the dynamic space, it's always kind of been this, honesty system. And I think it's ultimately flawed. I think a lot of revenue's been left on the table from it. And so I think that, my advice would be don't go there with a honesty system.
No, I don't think it works either. I completely agree. The other thing is to go, I tried to go fairly simple with the other option is, instead of just per user per month and things, which is a bit more complex, I tried to go with per instance. So per org. So just per tenant or per instance. So if you want to load the add-on onto your production instance, that's one license. If you want it on dev and test as well, that's another 2 licenses, but we discount them. And it means it's one price. You just say, look, this is how much it costs X, and it's simple. Now, the other option that you kind of alluded to a little bit before maybe was the the duration, or I actually just went with upfront pay. I've got two options actually. Pay now, like the old buying Microsoft Office off the shelf in the old days, an actual box off the retail shelf. You get Microsoft Office 2010 and you've paid X amount for it. Now, when Office 2016 comes out, you have to go and buy it again because it's or buy an upgrade or whatever you want to call it. So there's different ways of doing it, and I think you've got to consider all those things, and the management and, as you said, policing of that, or the billing is the ramification to whichever option you choose. I just tried to go really simple. I pretty much went with the whole method of just buy it and it's yours. Buy it once and it's yours for your environment. And that was purely out of my own fear of not being able to manage like too much complexity on my side, billing and stuff initially. But you notice a lot of other ISVs doing many other methods. The other thing is you got to weigh in as far as revenue streams. Like, are you pricing your add-on is it really expensive? And you're not going to sell very many, but when you do, you're going to make a lot of money. Or are you making it really cheap and trying to sell high volume? And also, or are you giving it away, like we sort of mentioned in the earlier podcast? So considering all those things is very important because they all have flow-on effects to your revenue stream.
So true, so true. What limitations do you foresee as the platform grows? What could developers do to overcome those limitations? And I'm talking about AppSource here.
Yep. So again, AppSource limitations, security, protection of IP. Sound like a broken record now, but
but it's
the billing.
It's the point.
It is, and I think the fact that AppSource is geared, the way the team put it is, it's an experience platform. They want everyone to be able to try it now, try it for 30 days. And that just does put the risk back on us as ISVs that we're taking that risk. It is kind of like sending someone your solution in an email. Here you go, have it, have the file. So taking that into consideration. Now, these are all limitations, the billing, all those sorts of things. How do we get around those? Again, very good question. Is it up to someone else to step in and provide a solution to that, or do we just all go about our own methods of trying to do our best there? That's the $1 million question. The other side of the limitations, or as the platform grows, I think is also just what any app store probably deals with, which is that overpopulation, too much noise, quality control. Now, they have a fairly rigorous quality control to get your app in there. But, I guess my thoughts initially too were like, what if someone just builds the same thing as me and puts it in there? What am I going to do about it?
That's right. You're creating a mall mentality as it, it's 3 shoe shops side by side, right?
Yeah. So
Dilutes the offering.
There's always that. So I don't know how they're going to, there's already quite a lot in there, as you would be aware. So finding what you want, or customers actually getting what they want in good quality, is going to be a big challenge long term.
Yeah. So getting the search right and or the hierarchical drill down right. And it's interesting because one of the biggest failures of Pinpoint in the past was that it was just a absolute diabolical mess when it came to trying to search for a solution, because the way they kind of geo-fenced the world around to whether they would display a product or not and what geographies and stuff. It was just an absolute mess. One of the constant complaints of Pinpoint was, I can never find stuff. You tell me it's up there, I can search for my own product and I can't even find it, knowing the exact name of it and stuff. It was just a mess. And I tell you, if that, search is critical, and really, keeping evolving that is going to be definitely affect, the success of the application and people's desire to put up there. It was interesting. Yesterday I was with one of my customers, another ISV company, built a full suite of applications that sits on Dynamics in the mapping space. And, they were like, hey, one of the things that concern us about AppSource is what you've already said again, is IP leakage. Sure that, we've done everything to protect ourselves as such, but you're really just saying, hey, to all my competitors, etc., as well, here it is. Take a look. And it can be simple stuff, right? As in, there's companies and geographies around the world where they can reverse engineer a product very quickly and produce a ripped down version. I mean, it happens in industry, Nike shoes, Adidas, whatever, this kind of stuff is going on all the time. But if you like, because there's none of that kind of like real control around the IP, I definitely know there's people that have concerns about listing and allowing, as you say, that experience thing that Microsoft's driving on the platform. Yeah, experience is also giving, inviting anybody to come in and just copy and rip my idea off as well without any kind of recourse.
It was one of my biggest concerns going into it. And they're really, I guess we came to the decision at some point that it's kind of like I can just sit on the sidelines here and never put my hand up and never get a dance, or I can just say, you know what, take the risk. And if someone goes and rips it off and goes and sells it and uses it for their own customers, and I'll never know about it potentially. But
c'est la vie.
Yeah, that's the risk you take. But yeah, I definitely think that's one of the biggest fear factors going around.
Yeah. What's your best tips for companies wanting to launch products on AppSource? If someone came to you tomorrow and said, hey, I've got a brilliant idea, built this product out, and now I'm ready to get on AppSource. Tell me the things, what things at the top of your mind must you execute on correctly?
I think initially when I listed, I was very much focused on the product itself and the functionality and the delivery of it and how it looked and how it worked. More so afterwards is when the reality hit in about the whole marketing piece and the channel and how are you going to sell this, how are you going to bill it, all this stuff. I think depending on your business's makeup and how much of this stuff you've already got in place, it might not be as much of a jump for them, so maybe it's not a big deal. But obviously thinking through your whole plan around, why are we doing this? What are we going to do if we get leads and we need to demo? Is this going to be a drain on our resources? Do we have time for this? How are we going to support it? I mean, the other thing we probably haven't touched upon a lot is how do you support those products? All ISVs support their products, but often it's kind of more so with a close-knit base of customers that you've sold direct to. What if it starts opening up where you're selling things? I had a lead from a completely random type of business near the beginning that was like a manufacturing kind of company somewhere in middle America. And it was just blew my mind a little bit. There's this little company somewhere in the middle of America that wants to use one of the apps. And I was like, how's this going to, this is the reality. How's this going to work? How am I going to deliver it to them? Make sure they're happy with it. Make sure that they're getting updates from us and knowing how to use it and that user experience of being happy with it. And that's very hard to do when you've got a couple of hundred of these people scattered all over the globe and you don't have that touch and feel. So it's an interesting point. But I would just say you just got to plan all this stuff out and think it through a little bit more so than just the product itself. And it's a bit different to selling to your own customer that's down the road from you or in the same country. Yeah,
so true. As in, I'll give you another example that I've had is Experido were based in Belgium from memory, and I was based in Sydney when I was using their product on a lot of projects. And they just didn't accommodate our time zone, period. And it was kind of like, it almost became a deal breaker in that their product had been a great product. It had grown, they've just recently sold it to a Canadian company. And yet they hadn't really thought out their business model for dealing with an international time zone diverse audience and making sure they can support, because, in a modern, always on connected world, in my business hours, and, in let's say America, for example, is your sleeping hours in Melbourne, how do you make sure that a company can get support around the clock, which is really a 24/7 almost, or at least a 24/5, or really 6 if you're going to cover the time zones, right, experience. And so how do you make sure that everything, from bug tracking is formally, there's no gap, nothing's falling through the gaps to someone raises tickets, that you've got to have a whole ticketing engine in place, and it's got to really kind of work to the expectation that people have now. I'm finding more and more that all type of support I'm doing is always via web chat. And it's just so much better because I know I'm not kind of sending a request into the ether and going, I pray they have a workflow that works and is not, down today, and I'm going to get the response. And now it's just like web chat is fantastic. You can ask your question, you're 1 minute away from being supported, and here's the answer. Oh, we've just logged into the back end and did X, Y, Z and solved it for you. Have a good day. See you later. And I'm just like, that's just the common expectation nowadays, and part of scale and going to a global audience, you got to think about that type of stuff.
Absolutely.
To take a product to market like you have, what recommendations do you have outside of just the AppSource? You've mentioned engaging with partners, but what else is involved?
Oh, well, there's so much. I mean, getting, like we've just touched upon even in the previous question, the fact that you have an idea or a product that works, and it depends how sophisticated it is. You mentioned Experido and these other doc generation, even click dimensions, you've mentioned. Depending on the complexity of your product, you're used to selling it and installing it, giving it to a partner, and they're installing it for you or for the customer. These are just the very beginning parts of the equation. So to be honest, I think I mentioned last time as well, I'm very much a beginner at this stuff myself. So I'm trying to work all of this stuff out myself and trying to figure out what are we doing here? What, are we trying to, as you say, add 10 apps, become a complete ISV with little add-ons, and that's kind of our business model. Currently, we're still set up like a pretty traditional CRM practice. We have existing customers we support. Yeah, we use ticketing systems and stuff. So the add-ons kind of can sort of just bolt onto that at the moment. But if you're really going to make a run of this thing, you kind of do have to set it up like a business in its own right. And I think looking at all those other guys that have done it before, the John Graveleys, all these MSCRM add-ons, all these guys that have been doing it for a long time, they've obviously got a massive time advantage on me. So got to learn from these people and seek out as much information as you can about whether this is really what you want to get into. I guess that the AppSource, getting back to the AppSource angle on this platform, is they don't want it to just be a lead generation tool. So they're trying to dissuade you from just using the contact us scenario, so that it's just a way of you marketing to people and getting a hook in. They really want you to be able to give people something, some value, a trial, something. So I probably skirted.
But at the end of the day, it's lead generation. I mean, it's all cool to get all fancy about, what they want to kind of see it as. But, Microsoft's in the game of business, and we're in the game of business. At the end of the day, nothing happens till money changes hands, right? It's the only way we feed our families and live, if you like. And so they can take that line, and yes, I agree, you need to make sure the experience is all encompassing. But at the end of the day, if I'm putting a product up there, it is to get not only leads but qualified leads that return business for me, right?
Absolutely correct. Once again,
yeah.
Show me the money.
Okay, so how do you go about defining your addressable audience and scaling your product distribution? And what I'm talking about there is that in your situation, your product is probably every Dynamics instance globally could use or value your product. But then, it's kind of like, that's a pretty big addressable market. And then, you could throw billions of dollars at that market and still not get it from a marketing perspective. So how do you kind of create the focus that you need to really create the success with the product?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I learned this in the first few months of listing. I went into it, and again, perhaps naively, being the first time we've taken a big run at this. Apart from selling to our own customers, this was the first time we've gone out to market with them, these things. And as add-ons go, you can be really horizontal and general, like we tried to be, because I did think, everyone could use these things and adapt them. But we touched on it last time again, but not everyone's got the complete imagination that I do for my products. So you do have to sometimes target them, and it may be just building more verticalized, snippets of the solution, or just branding them in that way. It doesn't have to be the solution's different at all. It could just be that you're marketing it for, tiles for for medical, education, mining, banking, whatever it is. And so definitely picking your verticals. It's always been true that, you know, if you've got some vertical experience, you're going to probably have a bit more success. I think that's true with the apps too. You know, target markets that you think would use those features more, get more benefit out of it, and you'll probably have a bit more success. You know, my experience has been that while I've gone very broad, yeah, it's kind of a bit all over the place. You know, like I said, I'm getting leads from just completely random types that industries I've never had any experience in. And I know that the tool can enhance that, but I'm not as confident as the industries I've worked in previously and applied those tools. So trying to be a bit more vertical is probably a good idea if you can.
Yeah, so true, so true. So we've talked a lot about AppSource and your journey in creating business apps on Dynamics. Can you tell me a bit about the pitfalls to avoid in listing an AppSource? And just so really, you know, those that are listening here kind of are aware of those and therefore can come up with solutions to handle them.
Definitely the first one would just be the time and resource commitment. I think your previous guest, Jerry Weinstock, Jerry Weinstock mentioned that earlier. That the actual time and effort it required and the money effectively for that business to commit those resources to building it out and listing and publishing was considerable. And for me, it was also, but it was almost a labor of love for me. You know, it was a bit of a nighttime activity as well. You know, it's burning the midnight oil. And so that, you know, any business going into this, even if they've got the existing add-ons or solutions and ISV things that they're selling themselves in the channel, there is a few things to jump over, a few hurdles. So it's going to take some time and money and commitment from the business to get them listed. And I think the post that, getting them listed, I think the big factor is just all the other things we've discussed today. The fact that you're going to have all this other ancillary structure set up to handle how are you going to market it, who in your team is going to handle those queries and do this, maybe your sales team. And depending on your size of your organization, you know, I'm small. If you've got a large organization, maybe you can just, you know, it can be absorbed into the existing resources, or you may have to put someone on. You know, that's the reality of it. And that's a good problem to have if you get enough inquiries that it's generating sales and you need to put on more staff and it's building a business. That's fine. But it will be a drain on your business potentially in the short term. Yeah.
Okay, let's take a quick chat around Microsoft Partner Competencies for ISVs. I know a new competency's recently come out. What do you recommend competency-wise to go after now, knowing what you know?
Well, obviously, in our Dynamics CRM, Dynamics 365 customer engagement sphere, you know, you've got the cloud, business applications cloud, obviously. But in terms of AppSource, the interesting one that you alluded to was the new ISB Silver and Gold competency, which was announced. And that is an interesting one because it actually doesn't have a huge amount of requirements yet to achieve that.
So off the top of your head, what are they? What are those?
I believe from reading the documentation that the main requirement was actually that you have an app listed in AppSource or on the Azure marketplace. And there isn't a performance requirement as yet. And the other requirement is you pay your fee, but that's pretty standard.
What's a fee? What's a fee just for listeners?
I think the fee was around, quote me, $1,600 or, $1,600.
Okay,
US,
that's not too bad.
Something around that.
Yep, I've definitely paid north of $7,000 for my gold competencies in the past, so that's not too bad, right? It's a low barrier.
Even if you're a sort of Microsoft Partner Network and you don't have a silver competency or gold in, cloud business apps and you've gone for the action pack or something, that'll cost you $500. So it's sort of like a middle tier step, I guess. But the beauty of it was that if you've got you've got your app now listed in AppSource, you're going on that train, then the ISB Silver is apparently pretty much there for you to join. There is being just released. I hit the usual hurdle that I was like, great, this is fantastic. Sign up. Sorry, for Australia and New Zealand, at least anyway, that I inquired about, you can't sign up for ISV, the new competency, until your MPN information has been ported to the partner center. And there's no actual idea on when that's going to happen. So for the moment, we kind of, in a way, look like we're stranded. We're not able to get that as yet.
And so what are you doing with the regional service centre in regards to that? What's the story?
As soon as I read the requirements and I was like, this sounds great, went to look up how I can sign up, and I couldn't seem to find out how, I couldn't find it. I couldn't work out how to do it. And so I rang them, and their response pretty much straight away was, you have to be, your profile has to be migrated to Partner Centre before you can get that. And I said, okay, when's that happening? And they were like, well, there's no planned dates yet for Australia and New Zealand.
So did you raise a ticket on it?
I said to them, what's the, what can I do about this? I do have another friend who's in the channel that has, raised those concerns with some people in the US, and there is some talk going on. But again, don't know whether this is a problem that is really known about very widely yet, and then whether things are being done about it, or whether it's just the usual, the US gets everything before we do type of scenario.
I tell you, you should see if you can open a ticket on it. You'd be surprised how a ticket blinking on someone's dashboard open for a week, 2 weeks, is a massive motivator to get results, because it affects everybody's kind of performance metrics.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll take your advice. I'll get on to
that. Okay, so just what's the requirements for this competency? So it's listing on AppSource, paying, let's say, less than $2,000 fee. Anything else?
No exam requirements and no performance requirements at this stage anyway. Now, obviously, they may slap something like that on later on, but
totally.
At this stage,
that's
it. So
awesome.
Pretty easy.
Sounds fantastic. Hey, before we get on to some quick fire questions, is there anything you'd like to add?
I think the only other sort of thing I was thinking about recently was that, there's a lot of other, as being, in the AppSource platform, it does kind of open up some other things that people might have heard of and may not have, when we mentioned the old other Microsoft programs like the OCP catalog, which is the way that, you can, other large scale partners use the internal OCP catalog to buy solutions and ISV solutions. And also Microsoft's internal sales and success teams use it when they're trying to, help customers. So that's something that you can kind of, it can be, AppSource can be a bridge to that kind of thing, which is good. One of the requirements. Plus also, I guess it was announced at Inspire recently that they were going to be promoting more of that partner to partner sales motion. I think it's going to be coming to AppSource and in the Azure marketplace. Now, whether that's the OCP catalog being merged in maybe with AppSource, again, I don't have, inside details on that. I'm just going from the publicly released info, but all those things are very interesting too. There's all these co-sell and other programs that Microsoft have that you just discover by tripping over them. So there's a lot out there if you kind of start digging, and AppSource can be a bit of a first gate, for some of those things.
Yeah, so true. Awesome, mate. That's been, once again, time's flowing. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yes.
Fantastic. Let's get on to these quick fire questions. As you can imagine, I'm just going to repeat the last ones. I've got some new ones this time, and I think this will give us a bit more insight into you. But what's your favourite word and why?
This was a hard one, but I'm going to have to be a bit silly with this one. But my son, my 2.5-year-old son, just has latched onto the word nuts. And he says it every 5 seconds, and so I've started saying it. So nuts.
Excellent.
I don't know what it means, but it's just everything's nuts for me now.
That's cool.
So it's a bit of a silly.
What would be the one album that would be always in your playlist?
This is an easy one for me, and it would be Soundgarden, Super Unknown for me.
Nice.
Bit of a child of the grunge years myself.
Yeah, excellent. Name a product or service you love so much that you'd be happy to be the company spokesperson.
This is a really hard one, actually. I thought about this a lot and thought, who would I endorse and what do I love? I'm going to say the CFA, the Country Fire Authority here, which is our sort of regional fire. I live kind of on the outskirts of Melbourne in a very heavily bush type area, and lots of fires around in summer, and they just do an awesome job, and they're all volunteers, and it sort of blows my mind. Most of the guys on my street are in the CFA, and they keep trying to get me to join, but I just haven't found the time to commit to that. But love those guys. So if they needed any help with their IT or Dynamics installation, I'd be sure to help.
Excellent. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
In general, and this wasn't from any one particular person, this has been bandied around a little bit, but, do what you love where possible, obviously, and the rest will sort itself out, I think is the key one. So just, if you do what you love, I guess it just gets you through. If you want to push through that can't be stuffed barrier, just keep going with it. Do what you love. That's what I try to do.
Excellent. Who do you recommend as a guest for this podcast in the future?
Well, I already put my vote in last time for you to interview yourself, but if not, if you're still not going to go that way, I'd have to say, although we do get a bit of him on other podcasts, I think Steve Mordew, have you interviewed him directly before?
The appointment has been set up.
Ah, fantastic. Great.
He just hit me up this week and goes, man, when are you going to get me on your show? And I'm like, okay, it's done, buddy. I think I've got it late August scheduled to have a chat with him. Yeah.
Ah, great. Love it. Yeah, we'll look forward to that one.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, Dan, it's been so good to have you back on the show, and I hope your success continues. Before you go, if people want to follow you online, where can they find you?
Absolutely. It's been great to be on, and they can catch me on LinkedIn, Dan Hesketh. Just look me up, Mia, MIIIA.com.au, or Mia XRM on Twitter.
If you're interested in taking your career or practice to the next level and would like a coach, please get in touch. You've been listening to the Dynamics 365 show. Please consider subscribing to the feed on any great podcast player. For show notes or to discuss anything covered in the show, please go to nz365guy.com/28, and I look forward to catching up with you soon.